Okay, Thursday, 13th of November, 2025. So, Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. Outpacing Bitcoin's 200-week moving average. How fast should you acquire and how much should you buy Bitcoin? So, a lot of people talk about having more Bitcoin all the time and talk about its growing ecosystem with adoption and the positive feedback loop I've discussed many times here and there. And so what we see with Bitcoin is it doubles every 4 or so years, and 41 months it doubles as well. So some different heuristics to look at there. And we could say, well, some would say simply have more Bitcoin at the end of the month than the start of the month. Yes, I agree. Let's go deeper. We see the 200 week moving average and how that's increasing adoption, because at a meta level, Bitcoin has only ever been in a bull market with only temporary local bear and bull markets, a year or two here and there. But on the grand scheme of things, when in doubt, zoom out. It's one big bull market from down there all the way over there. That's the chart. Then we look at the 200 week moving average and realize it's growing. That means that we could say that the network is adopting. There's a nice meme that said, it's that matrix meme with the spoon, realize the truth about Bitcoin. Or what is that? There is no bull and bear market, only adoption. Again, when in doubt, zoom out. So then we say, right, as a good number, a good heuristic, to what extent, to what percentage, for example, should we grow Bitcoin, have more of it? We could say, some people say get to 1 Bitcoin. Some people say have more at the end than the start. Nice, simple heuristics, but let's go a little deeper based on the actual charts. So the Bitcoin 200-week moving average chart is increasing by $40 to $50 a day. That's an interesting thing there, which means that you could argue that within reason you will never see that price below that number ever again. So as it stands right now, it's 50 or so thousand. Let's just say that. So then we could say in 200 weeks, 4 or so years, yeah, the price is going to double, and the 200-week moving average will be at today's price within reason. Let's just posit that, for example. So then we say, right, by using that number, it's something like 1/10% per month, and I forgot, it's like 3% per month, or something like 12. I can't remember exactly. But the principle here is that we could say we would need to acquire Bitcoin faster than the general market, the ecosystem is developing. No, adoption is growing. Acquire Bitcoin at a faster rate than the percentage growth of adoption, because, and there's two interesting things behind this, because then we avoid the risk of being diluted in the network of 21 million by not being crowded out the space. Because we could say, you have, let's say, 1 Bitcoin, but then someone over here is buying Bitcoin all the time. So and he's buying 1, 2, 3, 4, such and such. Then you could say, right, in terms of a closed ecosystem, he has more power than you in that closed ecosystem, 21 million. Correct. Your position, in some ways being diluted. Your power, your strength, your prestige, let's say, your position in the ecosystem is being diluted, not because you're getting rid of your Bitcoin, selling it, but because someone has more power than you. But the other thing to consider on the flip side is, even though someone has more Bitcoin than you, they have no power over the protocol. They have no power over the code. So in some way, that's good. But on the flip side, 21 million, you want as many as you can. Otherwise, your purchasing power is guaranteed, let's say. I use that loosely, but we could look at the charts. We could say it's secured. But your position, your prestige, your strength, there's no word for this. But you're being diluted. You risk being diluted, so to speak, by other people having more Bitcoin than you in the closed ecosystem of 21 million. Not exactly, because dilution implies that it's increasing 21, 22, 23 million. But your position, your share of the pie, especially as the halvenings continue over the next preceding decades. But luckily, the inflation from those halvenings goes to zero, so that it's fixed. But your share of the pie gets smaller, and your share of the pie is static, whereas adoption is increasing. So then it's like a quasi-inflation in a way. It's like like a adoption inflation or user inflation. The more people there are, yes, the purchasing power increases, but your again your strength, your position, your prestige in the network um, flatlines unless you're acquiring more Bitcoin at a faster rate than the society, the community at large is adopting Bitcoin. You're staying ahead of the curve. You're staying ahead of the adoption growth, let's say, as quantified by the 200-week moving average. Because we could say every 41 months, 4 years, we can argue, the price doubles. That's power. And they say when you do a back test as well, you see on any 3 or 4 year time period, the price of Bitcoin's gone up as opposed to gone down, which is powerful. So then that means more people are using the network. They're using it, store value, miners, building top of the infrastructure, etc. But as it's happening, you risk being crowded out, so to speak, by not acquiring more Bitcoin more faster than the network is growing, than the adoption. That's the interesting thing to consider. So then we say, right, if it as it's increasing by $40 to $50 a day, that means we can argue you would need to buy $55, $56 equivalent of Bitcoin every single day to exceed the adoption of the network. Because this is a kind of internal benchmark of your position in the whole ecosystem. Again, remember, fundamentally speaking, that your number of Bitcoin doesn't mean you have more control of the protocol. It's just you're being crowded out of the actual society, community adoption. Meaning, if you've got one Bitcoin, and so is he, and he, and he, and he, and he, and he, and he, well, how unique are you? But if you've got one Bitcoin and it's growing, and he's only got one Bitcoin, but you've got 1.1, and he's got one Bitcoin, and someone else buys a Bitcoin, but you've now got 1.2, etc., etc. You see how you're maintaining your share of the pie, so to speak, in spite of adoption. It's a positive feedback loop. It's a positive feedback loop within a positive feedback loop. As adoption is growing, price, more users, more infrastructure, more miners, you're also increasing it as well, because the more people there are, you don't want to be crowded out. That's powerful. That's deep. And it's all numbers are valid. Get to one Bitcoin, have more Satoshis Bitcoin at the end of the month than the start. Yes, but then we could say, again, 45 to 50 or $40 to $50 a day. Or whatever the adoption is in percentages per day, per week, per month, in excess of that. So then you could say, right, on this weekly chart or yearly chart, year to date, you name it, the moving average, the 200-week moving average has been, say, 1% per month. Then you need to increase your position in excess of that, 1.1. That excess is actually largely immaterial because the inflation is going to zero, so you haven't got to battle that. There's no two-front war here. It's just beat that number. The more the merrier. And then you can say, right, well, over the entire 15, 16 year, what's that percentage on average per day, per week, per month, per year been? Oh, it's been this, 1%. Okay, again, beat that 1%. So as not to get crowded out of the community. Community, ecosystem, adoption, yes. Again, he's got a Bitcoin, he's got a Bitcoin, he's got a Bitcoin, but you've got 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. Nice. Again, thankfully, your purchasing power is secure because Bitcoin standard. And again, luckily it goes to zero. And again, no control of the protocol, but still, you risk being, again, there's no word for this, diluted. You're losing prestige, losing power, losing strength in the adoption. Again, it's not adversarial, it's not combative, but it's to understand, not to get crowded out the community. Because if everyone's got one Bitcoin, how unique are you? How special are you? That's the crux. If everyone's got one Bitcoin, and you've only got one, then how unique and special are you? But you've got two. Why? Because you've been buying it consistently. Oh, you've got three. He's got one, 3. Oh, very interesting. And what does that mean? That power dynamic within the community. Because then you could say that's going to emphasize or exaggerate the wealth inequality over the preceding decades as to the whole coiners, multi-whole coiners, and no coiners. Wow. But then the meta pattern, even deeper, would be to say, continue to get richer. How much money is too much money, you could say. Without being philosophical or moralistic, how much money is too much money? Interesting. And then you create the heuristic and the KPI to say, right, if for 200-week moving average is 1% of this particular time frame, or this particular time frame is 2% per week, for example, per day, per whatever, per hour, whatever. Am I outpacing it? Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting angle. Very, very interesting. But it's quite valid. Not to be crowded out, because even this, over the preceding decades, I think it's one of those things where you'll thank yourself for having that kind of attitude and that kind of discipline and that foresight to be thinking about these things. Because even though it'd be difficult in the short term, calculating and studying and analysing and allocating, whatever, 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, 16 years, 20 years, pick a number of years, you'll just say, oh, what a relief, thank God. Oh, thankfully I did that back in 2025. Oh, wow. Thank goodness for that. Wow. But that's an interesting thought. But nonetheless. But either way, Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. Subscribe for more, and you will see me tomorrow.